Welcome to One Bite is Everything, where we find new ways for you to have a big impact on your personal health, community, and the environment with tiny, informed decisions, one bite at a time. I'm your host, DiPrima, and today on One Bite is Everything, we meet Julie Friend, whose entire life was changed by shopping at the farmer's market. Not only that, but what she discovered after that could have a huge impact on your own health and the environment you live in and want to preserve for future generations. Her story is a bit of a story of discovery, where she adopted new ways of thinking, got some experience, and changed some of her own perspectives. I think you're going to find her passion and her willingness to roll up her sleeves really inspiring. Let's jump in to see how she got started.
Wildham Farm started about 4 years ago. It was in the works before that for a couple of years, just talking, planning. We're in Western Maryland, the most western point in Maryland. So kind of like right beside West Virginia. So we're in the mountains. It's completely different than like the Eastern Shore. So don't think about DC or Baltimore.
There's no crabs.
No, the area is really cool because it is kind of like a tourist area. We have a lake and a ski resort here. It's still a rural area, so the farm is situated in really close proximity to those things. The farm was purchased by my grandfather in the 70s. So from my grandfather and then every generation before that basically is from this area. So I didn't grow up here, but I came here growing up to visit, ski, and whatnot. So it's a very familiar place to me. The farm had been in my family since the 70s, but it was leased out to other farmers. They were doing crops, they were doing corn and soy most recently before we transitioned it. It was just something that I sort of became interested in. I was actually living in Chicago and I went down just like a rabbit hole of like health and nutrition. And that led me to shopping at the farmer's market. And that led me to having so many conversations with the people that I was purchasing my food from and really learning about regenerative agriculture and asking questions about it. And, learning that we can produce food in a way that can be really good for the animals, really good for the land, and ultimately good for humans. So I have always been a meat eater, and I've always had this internal thing where I felt really bad about just factory farms and animal confinement. And it was something that was important for me to know where my meat was being sourced from. So when I started learning about regenerative agriculture and the idea behind raising animals in a way that they were able to express their natural instincts, that had a positive impact on the ecosystem, and that ultimately produced this really nutrient-dense meat, that was something that really excited me because, like I said, I am a meat eater. Like I feel the best when I'm eating meat. I function the best, and it's just something that I want to be a part of my diet. So two things were happening. I was learning about all of these things over here in Chicago, and then my parents had decided to move to the farm in Western Maryland to live full time. They were living in Pennsylvania. I think my mom, really both of my parents, started thinking about what it meant that they were chemical farming. And so, it was something that they didn't really think about before they were actually living on land that was being treated that way. So they made the connection between, okay, what does it mean when they're spraying these herbicides and pesticides and synthetic fertilizers, and how is that going to affect our water and just like our quality of life? So they were intrigued by the idea of doing something differently. And I was listening to every podcast and like reading every book about this. And I'm like, yeah, we have to do this. So the guy who I was buying most of my meat from in Chicago, he was like, there's this conference in Wisconsin called Moses, and you should come and you should bring your parents, and it'd be a really good opportunity for you guys to all learn about what you could do with the farm.
Moses is the Midwest Organic and Sustainable Education Service Organic Farming Conference. It brings together all kinds of farmers and agricultural professionals to learn about the latest organic production methods and to build a supportive community of resilient, organic, and sustainable farms.
And so I talked to my parents about it and they were totally on board. We all went to the conference and it just completely opened their eyes to like the possibilities. And yeah, after that, they were like, okay, yeah, we're ready to do this. We're ready to make a transition. So that's kind of how it happened. That was in the winter. That spring is when they ended the corn and soy contract with the farmer. And then they planted like a multi-species perennial pasture where the corn and soy was. So that was the first summer. And then by the second spring, I had moved there. And then that's when we started getting the animals. So we started with like 10 pigs and 100 layers. And I think we did 500 broilers the first year. And then since then, we've added cattle and sheep and increased all of the other species, the amount that we raised.
So I want to go back to the moment before you went down the rabbit hole in Chicago. I mean, you've got this family farm, someone else is farming it, you ski there, but you went down a rabbit hole and you had a different life beforehand. I wonder if there's a warning in here. Should people like stay away from the farmer's market? Something crazy might happen to them.
I think I was really sick for a long time and I didn't realize like how sick I was. I think there were a lot of things that I normalized, like depression and anxiety. And I would get chronic infections, like sinus infections. I used to get really bad tonsillitis until I got my tonsils removed. And then I started getting sinus infections. So the infection just moved throughout my body. And so once I started eating more whole foods and cooking from scratch is when I was like, holy shit. And that all started because I wanted to lose weight. So I originally went on like a whole foods diet for weight loss. But what came out of it was the realization that I was actually meant to be healthy. And these issues that I had that I thought were my lot in life were really just a consequence of me eating the wrong foods. And also I started getting more physically active too. Like I started doing yoga more, but it all sort of snowballed. And it's so funny because I'm always outside every single day now. But if you ask me growing up, I didn't want to go outside a lot. I wasn't really into being outdoors. And I think just like this shift in my diet and then shift in my physical health changed like who I was as a person overall, because now it's like the opposite. Now I don't want to be inside. I was just really fortunate to be living where I was living and that there was a farmer's market just a couple blocks away from me. And it was every Sunday, spring through fall. And I was like, I'm shopping at Whole Foods. I'm cooking only vegetables and meat. I have this farmer's market. And so I just set an intention that I was going to buy all my ingredients from the farmer's market that summer. And once I set that intention and started going there every week, it just really became like my church and it opened my eyes. Well, first I noticed like that the food that I was cooking tasted and had so much more flavor. And then there was something like really, really special about knowing my farmer's name. I think I was healthy before. I was healthy when I was buying the whole foods from the grocery store, but buying the foods that were locally grown and knowing the person who was growing them completely deepened my connection to my food and almost made me feel like a greater sense of wholeness. And so I think that's something that's really important. I think that's something that might be overlooked by people is just we are meant to be connected to our food. And like cooking is a great start to that. But getting to know the people who are growing it or actually putting your feet on the land where it's being grown, or as much as you can be involved in your food, the food that you're eating and the production of that, you'll just completely understand what it means to be a consumer.
I think that's really interesting to hear, especially from your perspective before you became a farmer.
And now my perspective has changed again.
Tell me how.
I think whenever I was a consumer and I became very interested in regenerative agriculture, and I thought it was like the only way, I think then actually becoming a farmer, I still obviously am very in support of regenerative agriculture, but I just have a deeper respect for all farmers. no matter what their methods are. Like, I just genuinely respect farmers. I think they're all doing a good job and they're all doing the best that they know how to do. And so that was a big shift. I think there can be like too much judgment sometimes, especially like from consumers about what farmers are or aren't doing. And I think it's good for consumers to have opinions and to have options and to make choices based on those opinions. But I just think farmers do a great job.
I think it is also funny, like you go to the supermarket and you just buy your carrots, but if you're buying your carrots from a farmer, you're like, how were they grown? What did you use? What's in the soil?
I think it's good still to ask those questions. Like, support your local farmers, ask them questions, and then you could create changes that you want to see. If that makes sense. Like, if you don't support the farmer at all, you can't really change what they're doing. For example, I care a lot about what my customers want. If people are constantly requesting the same things, they want to see something different, then I'm going to want to implement that. Whenever I was a consumer, I wanted to support the producers that were doing the pasture and forest-based livestock. But for chickens and pigs, I wanted certified organic feed. And that was something that didn't exist. And a couple farmers did say that if they were to feed the certified organic feed, they would have to increase their prices so much, and that they had basically pulled their customers. Like, would you pay more? Would you pay this amount more? And so many people said that they wouldn't. So it wasn't worth it for them to make the switch over to organic. But that's just another example of how much influence consumers have. Because if their customers would have said, I will pay that amount, then they would have switched to the organic feed.
It's something that I try to talk about a lot, is that like, this is your world. I mean, the egg carton doesn't have all those labels on it because somebody decided to put them on there. They were requested.
Yes, 100%. Consumers have paved the way for what's next.
Now, you are producing meat and they're on pasture. I think your turkeys are in the trees, and which is a sight.
The turkeys are everywhere. The turkeys are wherever they want to be. Sometimes they're on the front porch. Sometimes they're a mile down the road.
And you're presenting that meat, but you're offering value-added products, and that's had an impact on your business. Tell me about the business side of this and how it's been in the last year or so for you.
So we sell the meat from all of the livestock that we raise, but almost 2 years ago, we did make a pretty big shift when we hosted our first butchery demo and dinner event. So it was pork focused. Guests came and they had a pork focused dinner featuring various cuts and preparations of pork. And then after the meal, they watched my friend John, who's a craft butcher. He's an excellent butcher. He's taught me so much about that I didn't know. He breaks down a half hog in front of everybody. So just shows you where all of the different cuts come from. They can ask questions and they can actually call dibs on pork as it's being cut. So that gets really fun and exciting.
The farm dinners progressed and Julie started cooking at them more. Really, at first when a chef didn't show up. And it gained momentum from there. It's been a great way to get the word out about the farm and also to educate consumers on what they can do with different cuts of meat.
It's also really neat because I know what inventory we have and I know what we have excess of. And it's a good way for me to offload some of those cuts or things that are slower moving that I know how to prepare really well and I know are delicious, but the average consumer might not know what to do with that. And then, yeah, just the farm dinners. I mean, in themselves, just the amount of people that came throughout the summer, we've gained so many customers that now buy our meat because they came to a farm dinner.
So that's the real power of community there. You're very connected to the people who are living there or maybe even coming there. Are you shipping beyond your community? Are you only serving your community? What's your footprint?
I want to serve my community first locally, but I am so grateful for everybody who orders my meat that doesn't live here. I do think that what we do is unique. I think that like I said, the forest raised pork, the pastured animals, the fact that we feed the certified organic corn and soy free feed, it is something that not every person everywhere has access to locally. And so for me to be able to ship meat to them because it's what they want for themselves and their families, I'm so happy to do that. I still think even though the people who are buying my meat might not be my local customers, they're still part of our community because they're still the people that want to support regenerative agriculture and want to eat this kind of meat.
When people are out asking about, oh, I want grass-fed, I want grass-finished, I want pasture-raised, I want free range, all of the buzzwords we were mentioning, explain why having corn and soy-free feed is important. I don't think that's a buzzword that's made it to the top of the list yet.
I think it's being talked about more, but I think it's something that not everybody maybe understands. So I can just give the example of our pigs. So we do feed the pigs in addition to what they forage. We are very strict about the amount that we move the pigs in order for them to have constant access to fresh forage, because pigs can go through an area very quickly and root up and there's nothing really left for them to forage. So the frequency that we're moving them is really important for them to have that forage access. In addition to what they forage, we give them the certified organic feed. It's a mixture of peas, oats, barley, fish meal, kelp, other minerals, and we ferment it as well. So we add apple cider vinegar and water and ferment it. So it's really high quality feed. And the reason that the people are getting away from corn and soy, or the reason that customers are requesting it, is because it changes the fatty acid profile of the animal and it leads to higher linoleic acid, which is an omega-6 inflammatory fatty acid.
This totally begs the question, what does omega-6 fatty acid do? Well, on the positive side, it stimulates skin and hair growth, maintains your bone health, regulates your metabolism, and it maintains the reproductive system. So what's the problem with it? When omega-6 fatty acids are too high and are out of balance with omega-3 fatty acids, as they are increasingly in Western diets, they promote an increased incidence of harmful diseases like cardiovascular disease, cancer, and inflammatory and autoimmune diseases.
So as we've changed animal agriculture, the omega-6s have increased significantly in the fat of the animals. So that's one of the major reasons. And we actually have sent our pork fat out for fatty acid analysis, and it's very low. It's at 4.1% omega-6. And in comparison, that's like 3 to 6 times lower than other conventional pork and even pastured pork because of the corn and soy feed. So that's one of the reasons. Another reason that people are avoiding soy or avoiding it in animal feed is because it's a hormone disruptor and can increase estrogen. I guess there is a third reason, is just that we're just growing so much corn and soy.
Subsidies for certain crops like corn and soy started as a part of the New Deal under FDR's administration. This is a complicated issue in that subsidies really haven't adapted to the new needs of farmers as time has passed. Stay tuned for an upcoming episode where we unpack and simplify how to understand subsidies and the Farm Bill, their history, and their future.
It's insane. And I feel like that's what the farm was before. And I don't think we're growing corn and soy because it's these nutrient-dense crops that animals should be eating. We're growing so much of it, and then we're just like stuffing it into everything. So it's just those two things, that we avoid here.
After a banner year, the team at Wild Dom Farm is thrilled to be reaching more people and raising more pigs in the woods, and continuing to expand their sustainable farming practices with other livestock. Can you say that you have ever been on a journey of discovery like Julie's? I mean, she started frequenting a farmer's market and it changed her entire life, from her health to her profession. not to mention the land on the farm, our environment, and now our understanding of how what our animals eat actually impacts our health on the cellular level. Are you not blown away? If you are, please leave a review for the episode in Apple Podcasts or right on the onebiteiseverything.com website so more people will find it. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast in whatever app you're listening to it in so you will get first access to the amazing upcoming episodes where we unlock powerful small actions you can take to impact your own health, the health of our environment, and our communities. Thank you for being here. I am your host, DiPrima, and this is One Bite is Everything.